Hello, everyone. This is Nicholas P. Ugero, and today I have the pleasure and honor of having Chris Jantzen on my channel today. Thank you so much for coming on. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me, Nicholas. Appreciate it. I was honored to be invited.
Yeah, not a problem whatsoever. It's the pleasure's all mine. For people that aren't aware of who you are, if you just want to give a nice description of your background and what you do for a living, and or whatever you feel like sharing.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just I think what I like to share is that I'm just a regular guy. I'm just a guy like most people who might be listening. Um done carpentry for most of my life, construction, and I just kind of got to a point where I started putting all the pieces together, I guess you could say, in terms of coming from the background of always being curious, wondering about things, asking the bigger questions, and going from a place of like, well, what are these mysteries about these pyramids or these stories about aliens? It's just all starts off as fun. But at a certain point in my life, it became very serious. And for me, I think that turning point was when I started looking into 9/11, September 11th attacks, and I just like I had a what I it was like the iPad 2, I remember, and it was the first time that I really had like the internet in front of me and I could just look at whatever. And so I got bored playing the video games on there, and I was like started asking questions. I'm like, okay, this thing's kind of like a crystal ball, right? You can ask it anything. Well, what am I curious about? And then the more I thought about it, like that was what I was really curious about was 9/11. Like it never made sense to me from day one. From my brain, I see how things go together and how things come apart. I like to break stuff. And that just didn't make sense. I'm like, there's no way that those towers. And so, the more I looked into it, the more I realized that obvious there was so much BS with the narrative that was being told on television. And then from there, I started looking into chemtrails and geoengineering, and that was kind of mind blowing. That really took me a year, a full year, maybe 2 years of thinking, asking questions, talking to people, and it just from there I started getting into podcasts. And when I started listening to books and podcasts online, I just got to a certain point where I had an awakening experience, or like I think of it like the Matrix when Neo wakes up in that thing and realizes he's wired, and he looks up and down and there's people as far as the eye can see wired inside of this machine. And that's how it felt to me, realizing that the world we live in is not what I thought it was for most of my life. And so I started podcasting and reaching out to people, and here I am today, someone who makes productions, but I do it all in my free time. This is something I'd like to make my full-time gig, but right now I go to work during the day, and then in the evenings I'm working on making presentations and communicating with people like you and doing meetings and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's sort of the long story.
No, not at all. I appreciate the background. That's excellent. And yeah, I've got into similar topics as well. I remember when I first heard about like the chemtrails and stuff. My jaw was literally on the floor when I was going to work and just driving and looking up at the sky. I'm like, wow, they've been doing this and like for years, and I haven't even noticed it. And that was really mind boggling for me. And just like the whole being able to manipulate the weather, that was so fairy tale for me. I couldn't even conceive of that even being possible. And then they've been doing it since at least Vietnam. So it's really incredible to see stuff like that and just have your mind blown and having no idea what to even think anymore. Just the whole concept of reality and what we believe it to be is just so outlandish. It's stranger than fiction. So I definitely appreciate that. And I have your website up. So if people
Thank
aren't
you.
aware of the website you created, and I love the top, the banner, just the colors, and it looks really really good. I like it. So I appreciate you taking the time to make a website, because for me it still seems so daunting, that process of creating a website. So if you want to delve into the content that you have on your website, the whole overall goal, and then just maybe if you want to delve into a little bit about the process of how you created it.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's really a podcast. I really got because I got so fired up about podcasts that I decided to make it a podcast based website. And so what this is actually, a friend of mine created his own website podcast service where you get a website and a podcast all in one. And so he shares some of my views in terms of not appreciating government and in respecting freedom. And so I was like really happy to, rather than go to one of the big entities where you would normally get a website, is to get my hosting for my podcast through someone like you and I who's created his own business. And so that kind of helps me out get these things I've created onto like the RSS feed so it can show up on people's phones. But outside of that, I just make presentations, on my computer. That's what you're looking at there, where I tried to put together a whole series. I tried to put together how things made sense for me in sort of a step-by-step way that someone could go through. And I tried to, yeah, there I've got some meditations, but that one I'm still working on that section. But as far as like advice for other people, you got to start small, whatever you do, whether it's making a video or making your first presentation. You got to just start with something and put it out there. And like all the stuff I've done, when I look back at the earlier stuff, some of it's pretty embarrassing, but I just keep trying and trying and trying different things. And honestly, like I'm not even a very technical. I was telling Nicholas before we started that I wasn't even I hated computers. I tried to stay away from them and phones. In fact, for a while I had a flip phone, a long while. And the reason I learned how to do stuff online and to make is because I realized how important this stuff is. And that really was impressed upon me by Mark Passio on What on Earth is Happening podcast. He was one of my major inspirations because he was kind of like the way he put information together and so much of it in such a step-by-step process, and it kind of all put all these pieces together of things I'd been looking into for years. But there were so many other awesome podcasts along the way. In fact, just last week, was it last week or the week before, I did a podcast all about things that inspire me. So that'll be posted to that website soon, so folks can check that out. And I shared like some of my favorite books and podcasts and all that along the way. So I don't know. Did I answer your questions, or did I
Yeah,
go on a
yeah,
tangent?
definitely. I think that's excellent that you knew somebody that had that service where you could do the podcast and have a website all in one. I think
Yeah, that's called
that's
Podcast
smart.
Blast Off.
Podcast Blast Off. Okay,
Yeah, I think he's still
let's
got it advertised in publicly.
just gonna do this since we're live. Blast Off.
I wonder if I got that right.
Homepage. Yeah, we make podcasting easy. Let's see. Let's see if this is the one you're talking about, because that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's it. There you go. Right on.
Okay, perfect. All
Yeah,
right, I'm gonna
yeah,
copy this, put this right in the description right now. Awesome. That's
yeah.
cool.
It's just one way to do it. There's lots of ways, to put podcasts out there. My good friends at the Natural Freedom League, Will and John, they just make videos and put them on the various social platforms, and they have a really simple website. There's a lot of ways to go about it. You can start off, I mean, these days, getting a website and creating it's just a matter of going to one of these things like GoDaddy and getting a domain name and then find something to host it. It's really pretty easy. And even someone like me who was just kind of a carpenter guy, can figure it out. You run into a problem, you go on YouTube and be like, how do I solve this problem? And you'll find someone making a video showing you how to do it. But I think I think to me, the point of all this, the reason why it's important is because we're in a time right now where it's a very important time in history from my point of view and from a lot of others. And if you can't feel it, you're not paying attention. We're living in a time where we're at the crux of the issue in terms of human freedom versus human slavery. And this authoritarian, tyrannical style of leadership that's been ruling humans all through humankind, they're really pushing the ball forward right now. They're really putting the crunch on humans. So if those of us that aren't awake and aware to what's going on are not speaking out, we're not doing our responsibility, our due diligence for what we've known and come to understand. It's like letting people get destroyed with just lack of knowledge is really what it comes down to. And so I feel pressure from inside to keep working on this project of helping people understand what's going on, even though it's there's a lot of resistance.
Excellent. Yeah, I totally agree with that last sentiment that you made, and yeah, it's I know if you're watching somebody right in front of you and you know the solution or you know what's really causing something to happen and you're just not saying anything and they're just falling victim to that in some way and becoming and having harm caused to them or anything like that. Yeah, it's I feel that kind of inside myself as well, where I feel like if I'm not creating any sort of content, then I'm not like, what am I really doing? At the very least, if I'm at least gonna, hopefully, I can at least make a conversation with somebody online and have that online for people to see and potentially be inspired by. So yeah, it's definitely a very impactful moment in history that we're in right now, and even I can definitely step up a lot more. And yeah, it's good to remember that it's really serious right now. And I appreciate you for creating the website and doing your job, but then also doing this on top of that. It's very admirable. So thank you for what you're doing. And
Thanks, appreciate it.
yeah, not a problem. And from that, I wanted to delve into the funnel event that just took place this past weekend. I just heard about it probably a week or two ago, and I was very interested, and I was happy to hear that it was up and coming. So I looked at the presenters, and lo and behold, I find Chris there. So what you were talking about or wanting to talk about when I was reading it, like just as the description, and then what you actually did describe or go into this past weekend. If you want to describe just the event and also your specific presentation that you gave, if you want to go a little bit into that and how this kind of event formed in the first place.
Sure, yeah. The story is the best part because, like I said, I kind of go through these period of time in my life where I'm realizing, there's all these problems in the world. I realize I kind of finally get to the point where I start making these presentations like the ones you showed. And I realized that like it's an intense job. It's so much work. And I had tried to do a podcast once before. And so I started looking for other people that, and all of a sudden it occurred to me kind of like a realization. Oh, like people have hangout groups and stuff like on Facebook, right? You know, as I hated social media. So I go on Facebook and I looked for other people that were studying the work of Mark Passio. And the people you see here, the presenters, are the people that answered a video that originally it started out, a friend of mine started like a support group. And then I made another video looking for people that wanted to take action in the realm of freedom and people that cared about natural law. And these all people were who answered. We all showed up, and we started meeting every week. And we've been meeting for well over a year now. And it just went from being kind of like a support group, talk about our problems, to this idea of let's create a conference. And so we put together a totally free conference. Different members chipped in, making the website, making the graphics, and we all made our own unique presentation, and we put it all together and streamed it live for I think 14 hours of content or so. It went, fantastic, and it's all recorded now, and you can watch it. It's posted on Odyssey, and we're going to be posting the individual presentations on this freedomundernaturalllaw.com website in the next couple days here, or maybe even sooner. I think that's being worked on today. So yeah, I'm really proud of it because it's just like I said, just regular people. It wasn't people that like some of the presentations. It was their first time making a presentation at all, you know. And so it's just people that were inspired and care about truth and freedom, and we came together under this banner. And we had meetings where we tossed around ideas. What are we going to call it? And we came up with a list of different names. But where we ended up with the freedom under natural law is, I think that's the core understanding that we all share and that we agree on, that there's no way we're going to improve the situation in the world until people understand this dynamic that we call natural law. And, if people haven't heard those words put together in that way before, the idea is that there's an inherent pre-existing law to the universe. And that is just that everything we do actually matters. And that if we harm others, if we take things that aren't ours, there's going to be an effect. And that the way that pans out is in humanity, all humans, if we're all continuing to do these actions of stealing from one another and coercing one another, we're going to live in slavery. We're going to live in tricky times. But the more we all begin to not take things that aren't ours and live in accordance with natural law, the law that nature's law, you could call it, um, then we can live free. And so, I didn't say that quite as eloquently as sometimes I do, but we were all saying it in our own way if you watch the presentations. And law, we people think of law as what's written on these books and what governments tell you, and we're saying that's not the law. Law itself is the very reality we're experiencing. And I think one way to test that out, go do something, go harm somebody, go punch somebody. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but if you do that, you will see that there's an effect to every action. And so why wouldn't there be an effect to all of humans' actions? If we're all participating in a system that steals, then what's that going to create for all of human? It's not going to create a good situation. It's going to create a negative circumstance. And so we're heading in a negative direction as long as people keep doing those activities of supporting violence on each other.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that description. I think that's fantastic how you guys came together and we're doing weekly meetings. And yeah, it's just really good. People just seeing people put their willpower, to use collectively, not just having the thoughts and emotions where, wow, I really hate the situation that's happening. I really wish that people were learning a bit more about this subject because it involves everybody. It applies to everybody in the world. And yeah, and then you guys just use the willpower to take effective action, bringing that trinity together and to collectivize and trying to come up with a name and having someone do the website. And then you're guys going to start editing the actual whole presentation. So now it's all in clips, and all that stuff takes time. It's not where some magical fairy is going to come along and do it for you, or maybe you can pay somebody, but that's obviously some cost there. But yeah, you guys are just coming together and voluntarily doing it and taking donations, and it was a free event. And I think it's all just fantastic, and it's very uplifting to me in my eyes. I think it's very inspiring, and I very much look forward to watching it. And I'm sad I wasn't able to catch it. I was busy doing a lot of work, but yeah,
No,
I'm
it's all
definitely.
good. There's going to be another one too. We're already starting to plan the next one.
Hell yeah.
And the people involved, what was really cool to see was that there was a lot of nervousness leading up to it. Everybody's last minute trying to finish their work, but there's like this exhilaration in every member of our group now, realizing that we really pulled this thing off. We did it. And then now we're all kind of we're all jazzed up talking about what we're going to do next. So there'll be more to come. And it didn't take in amounts of a lot of money. We all chipped in like 25-30 bucks for like the website and stuff. But time, yeah, we put in a lot of time. How many hours did I spend on my presentation? I can't even tell you. Hours and hours. And your other question, my presentation was called The Ultimate Connection, and I had a subtitle, Divine Creative Energy. And basically what I'm getting at in that presentation is, in a way, it's a bit of an attack on religion. And it's trying to point out, what I'm really trying to point out is that belief can be a very dangerous thing. And most of our structures of society are run on beliefs, whether it's government or a religion or a particular culture or religion. And that has a lot to do with storytelling. And that what I'm trying to get at is the divine connection is our connection to the creation, what we're made of. And that's like the connection we have between humans, the connection we're having between each other when we're talking and we're realizing things. That's a divine connection. I try to tell my own personal journey in my presentation of coming from Christianity, and my dad was a preacher, coming from that into realizing what I see truth is and what I see good and evil is, and how I think that can help all humans. So that's really my core thing. I try to always bring it back to the spiritual journey. I think that's really what we need to do as humans. We need to work on ourselves. If we all do that, then we can see a better future for future generations.
Yeah, most definitely. And it's really interesting to think about the just like the thoughts, emotions, actions part of it, and the feminine and the masculine part of your brain, and how you can have a certain tendencies if you're left brain dominant or if you're right brain dominant, different personalities, different belief systems. And I've seen it. Like learning about it has really allowed me to have just better vision in terms of going around my day to day, I could see people that have a certain mindset, and I could just see it in them, like they can't control their emotions, or they're this or that, or they think that everything's preordained, or this or this, and I can. It's easy for me to see that now, and I can see it within my own self as well. I feel like, yeah, I probably am a little bit more right brain dominant from being like a weed addict and all these things, and I had depression for years and stuff like that. So I think that definitely put me in more of the right brain aspect. But just yeah, and then learning about the pineal gland, like that Egyptian eye, the way that's shaped, and you if you cut a brain in half, it looks just like the pineal gland, and it's like what really happens when you think holistically, when you're using both parts of your brain and it's working on the fundamental, like on the bridge too. It's not just kind of skewed, and then how that unlocks your pineal gland. It's so interesting to me, and I want to try to gain that ability more because I'd love to be able to describe it. Because for me, it's like, how much more intuition does somebody have, or like, what is there a connection after that, or I don't know what it is, because my mom's been having a lot of spiritual growth recently, and she says how she's getting downloads and she gets like the chills all the time and
Mm.
all these weird things. And I still think she's really right brain dominant because she has a hard time with her emotions, but I think she's just letting a lot of stuff out at the time at this moment. But yeah, it's just the whole concept is just it's crazy, and like that's how we're in this kind of schismed planet. I mean, we have like the Republicans and the Democrats. The Republicans are red, which represents the male, it's the defender and all that stuff. And then the feminine is the Democrats, the blue color, and it's the nanny state, more passive. Let's think about everybody else. Let's be compassionate. And they literally split a human being up in half. So more people that are left brain go towards the Republicans, and then right brain for the Democrats. And I just love to see what would happen if we started thinking holistically and understanding, wow, the food that I'm eating, or the air that I'm breathing, and all these things are negatively impacting myself. I'm at work left brained all the time because I'm thinking about a specific task. And then I go home and I sit on the couch and I'm right braining it all day, all night, So it's really interesting, just that whole concept of just consciousness and doing the right thing. And I think we have that internal like compass within ourselves, but it's just about unlocking that and having that intuition to be able to take a step back and say, okay, well, this action I did a week ago, like I hit somebody and I just drove off, maybe they came to bite me in the ass yesterday when this happened to me or whatever, like being able to kind of pinpoint certain instances. Cause I've been able to do that at times where something happens and I think about it, I'm like, oh yeah, that was totally from this. I just know it. I can't prove it, but I have a really deep seated hunch that that's what happened. So I think it's all just super
I think
interesting.
people get a little confused there, like with karma, sometimes like the cartoons, like you do a bad thing instantly, the hammer drops right on your head, or the God throws a lightning strike, and it doesn't really work like that. And I think that's kind of where some of the woo end of it, where people are like, nah, it's not like that. But it's like more like, I think, accumulative. The universe kind of takes its time, and if you're paying attention, you feel the synchronicity. You feel inside of yourself, you kind of know. And when you don't do something right, you're the one that's got to stay up late and think about it. And there's ways to ignore it and avoid it, but it always creeps up on you, you know. And I just want to comment one thing you were saying was like the two sides of the brain thing's really important. That's awesome the way you broke that down. I really appreciated that. And what makes me think is the metaphor I like to think about is, imagine having two radios, one on this side on your left, and then one right here on the other side. And they're both playing two different stations at the same time, hella loud, all the way turned up. How hard would it be to concentrate and think when you have two different radios playing two different stations? Well, our society's like that, but it's like six, all on every side. And that keeps people from being able to tune in to the ultimate message, the divine message, which comes from within. And so it takes a lot of work to get yourself there. But when you get there, I think a lot more is possible. You can tune into a higher vibration and become more than just an animal being. You can become a being that is what they call illuminated. And I'm not saying I'm an illuminated one, because that sounds like a big boastful thing to say, but I'm saying you can become more illuminated the more we work on both our physical body, our mental mind, and our spiritual self, and we integrate all those things, and they're all working towards the same direction, then all of a sudden it's like only one radio station's playing, and it's coming from inside of you. Your creative energy's coming out.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, eh, from what you were just describing in that last couple of sentences when you're talking about like working on it, like working on yourself and kind of developing that sort of mindset. What would be some things that you applied in your life, or if you know of anybody else, what they've applied in their lives to really kind of build that to where those radio stations aren't just playing all the time at high levels, but maybe you're getting the same radio station, where it's not you're not having those conflicting kind of thoughts and emotions, but where you're kind of becoming more holistic.
You know what you were saying, like your mom experiencing like pretty intense feelings and chills. I've had a lot of times in my life where I've gone through pretty intense sessions of those type of things and the downloads. And one thing I can say, there's most of the people I've talked to have got to the point where they've had some kind of health problem, or they've got sick, or what happened to me, I was having these pretty severe headaches. And so I started dropping things. I said, okay, no alcohol. Okay, next week I'm gonna spend less time on the computer, less light. I tried a series of things. I started eating more healthy. And when I worked on my body, on my physical form, I started doing more exercise, and I also started working on my addictions. I found myself getting these experiences. And so one thing that I've been recommending to everybody recently, because it's been like a miracle in my life, is Wim Hof breathing, Wim Hof method. And I highly recommend. His cold exposure is one thing, but breathing consciously or meditating at the same time every day is a pretty important life-changing kind of thing that anybody can do. A lot of people I've heard talk about journaling. Journaling has never completely worked for me, but doing some regular physical exercise and some conscious breathing every day has made a tremendous difference. And health-wise, I'm honestly not that afraid of getting sick. I I mean, I got sick not too long ago with probably what they're calling one of these names, but I wasn't scared of it, and my body knocked it out pretty quick, whatever it was, just like any other year, you know? No problem.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for those little tips, and I definitely want to learn a little bit more about that breathing that you were just talking about. That seems really interesting. Do you want to just delve into that for a quick minute?
Sure. Yeah, Wim Hof is amazing. He's got like 20 something world records. They put him up to his neck in ice, and he stayed in there for about 2 hours. He's been the top of Mount Kilimanjaro and Mount Everest, like in his shorts, no oxygen. And then it's not just him being amazing. He's gone on to train other people to do the same things he can do, and proved it in universities. They've had to change the medical books because of feats by Wim Hof has done. When I discovered him, I was having this asthma problem. I thought it was related to dust from the wood I was cutting, and it seemed like I was getting so much phlegm and snot that I couldn't breathe, and I had to use like an inhaler. It was getting to the point where I had to use it every day, every night, and I never wanted to be dependent on like some kind of pharmaceutical thing. So I started doing his breathing practice, and he has an app. You can get the Wim Hof method. It's WIMHOF. You can get his app, and he'll lead you through the breathing, and then it has you do some deep breathing, and then you hold your breath, retention, right? And I remember when I first started doing this a couple years ago, like I could barely make it through a minute and a half of breath retention. A lot of times I would get so anxious I'd have to sit up. I couldn't lay down doing it because it felt so like I was going to drown in my own fluids or something. But I don't have that problem anymore. I don't have that allergy problem. I'd never have to use any medicine. I do the Wim Hof breathing every morning. Recently, I held my breath for 4 minutes on one of the breath retentions, and like that's just unbelievable to me before I started doing this kind of thing. And so I try to recommend it to everybody. It's just one of many ways, though. There are a lot of people out there doing things like this, breathing methods. Get your body in shape, get your physical body working, and that will help with the mind too.
Almost certainly. Yeah, I know that I've been kind of stagnant for the past few months. I know that this past summer I went through a lot of trauma, so the whole biking thing, I wish I did that more. That was definitely therapeutic for me, but yeah, I wasn't doing that very often, and that is one thing that's been a godsend is doing my biking and getting exercise, full body, sweating my ass off, detoxing a bit. But yeah, like you're saying, just loosening up and helping out your body, eating healthy, maybe cutting back on crutches and addictions that you possibly have or things that you're doing a little bit too much. Yeah, those are all great points, and I appreciate you saying all
I
that.
just want to add one thing. All those things, I think what works is not to try to do it all at once, not to try to take big leaps. Be like, I'm going to stop eating sugar next week. Start with one little tiny thing, implement that, stick with it, then another thing. When I started doing push ups, I just did 7 every morning because 7 was easy for me. I do like 100 now, but I did 7 for like a month and before I went up to 10. So start one thing, get it to be a regular part of your life, then implement another thing. Don't try to make big old plans and then disappoint yourself and feel guilty about it and then give up. And that's the other way that people go about it that never works. It's got to be
Yeah.
something small that you can actually do and stick to it.
Yeah, because even now I can still easily burn myself out, and I could maybe try to go too hard with editing some, because I have like a backlog of probably now 6 or 7 interviews that I want to take off of YouTube, edit it, make improve it, and then put it on BitChute and Odyssey. I don't want to just go live on all of the platforms and just post it up where it's just raw. I'd like to be able
Hmm.
to put a little bit more visual flair in there, maybe some transitions and stuff. So I still have like a backlog of 6 interviews, and some of them are an hour or longer. So I know I have a lot of work ahead of me, and I keep doing more interviews, but I haven't edited more videos, so, or more of them. So they're still not on BitChute or anything. So I kind of give myself a little bit of an attack on that sort of thing. But I just can't help myself. When I see someone that I want to interview, I have to ask them, and so I usually schedule it sooner rather than later. But yeah,
The
I have
life of a content creator.
yeah,
It's hard.
definitely.
It's very difficult. And then people always asking you, "Did you watch this video? Did you watch that video?" I'm like, "I haven't watched any videos. I'm trying to make one. It took me
Yeah.
all week. I haven't watched anything."
I'm doing push-ups. Give me a break.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, it's awesome. So I appreciate you going into that. For people that are concerned with what's going on in the world, and there's things being pushed. I know it's in different pockets of the country and also in the world where it's happening in like certain severities, but in terms of like the mask mandates, the vaccine mandates, if you want to give any sort of personal stories on things that you've done in your own life to kind of take a stand and like make that message known to other people, like I'm not following this stuff. Like for me personally, going into stores without a mask on, I've been going to a couple of these vaccine mandate rallies. They aren't really thinking about the root causes, they're thinking more about just stopping the mandates. But I try to go in there with my own kind of mindset and talk to people and stuff like that.
Excellent.
um, so yeah, if you just want to give any sort of personal anecdotes or just any sort of tips and tricks for people that are maybe feeling a little nervous about doing that, standing up, maybe they don't have any friends, but they still want to do this sort of thing.
Sure. I mean, for me, it's been very intense. My whole life changed. 2020, I moved actually. I was with, uh, I left a marriage of 17 years. And you know, it's not the whole thing, but it was the tipping point. It was the thing that broke the camel's back. The area I lived in, I used to love living there, and it's the North Bay. Santa Rosa is where I used to live, which is a couple hours north of San Francisco in California. And when things changed and everybody started wearing masks, I was like, immediately, I'm not wearing a mask. This is my body, my choice. I thought it was simple, obvious thing, right? And the fact that people started getting so militant about it so quickly, um, I'm not normally a person to get angry. I'm really a calm, quiet person, but I felt myself getting extremely angry because I had already looked into matters of freedom, and I only understood that this is my body and that it's nobody else's choice to try to tell me what I should do with it. And I already had a feeling that things were coming down the pipe because I've looked down so many avenues of conspiratorial things. And if I think right now, a lot of people make fun of conspiracy. Like they've always said, "Oh, the conspiracy theorists," right? Well, if ever there was a time in history where you could see how right people were about that, if there's not one thing going on in the whole world right now, there all these governments of the world are trying to impose the same kind of things all at once. Doesn't that just seem a little too unified, you know? And coming at it with the same type of strategies all around the world, split people up, get people fragmented, and they're trying to keep us from being able to intercommunicate and reach that divine connection. And that's exactly what a mask does. It prevents you from seeing someone smile. It's like our expression is electricity. It's part of our life force, communicating with other people. And then what really struck me was thinking about children when I was a kid. they used to teach you never let kids play with like a plastic bag, because what if they put it over their head? They could choke themselves. And now you're putting masks on little kids. What about the little ones that don't understand and they start putting other things on their face? They could die. I mean, it's like all these things started coming to my head. What about robbers? Robbers going in stores. We used to have rules against masks, so we knew who was the robbers. And so I started making a video, 15 reasons to refuse to wear a mask, almost immediately into this thing. And of course, YouTube banned it within hours of me putting it on, even though it only had 10 views and I only have 100 subscribers or whatever. Instantly, got my first strike there. And the second one when I tried to put it up again. But I was militant. I wasn't wearing a mask under any conditions. And anyone that tried to tell me I should, got an earful when I had the strength. A lot of times I felt nervous and scared, and I would avoid going to places, get food delivered. I wound up moving to somewhere where I found that people didn't act that way. And what's interesting is people think of California as being such a liberal state. When you get out of the cities and you start getting more in the country, you'd be surprised. People are not having stupid stuff that, or anybody telling them what to do, to a certain extent. I'm still surprised how the majority seems to do whatever the TV tells them. But the further you get out of the cities, the more you find folks that understand a little bit more about freedom. And I think that's all that really matters in this whole situation. You can think whatever you want about diseases or masks or how effective they are or aren't, but it's not about that. It's about freedom. And as soon as you start trying to tell somebody what they have to do, then you're trying to make them your slave. You're trying to make a claim on them, and that's stealing. That's a type of stealing, and that's real simple. In terms of morals, right and wrong. It's wrong to try to force somebody to do something they don't want to do, and that should be really basic. And the fact that people don't understand that shows how far we are down that road of evil, around us. So I think what we really need to do is communicate with each other, connect up with other people of like minds, and form groups and start finding ways around, because the more and more in the future, anybody who disagrees with what's going on is going to be kind of an outcast. And so the more we work together and learn to work outside of the system, the more we can survive. And it's down to survival at this point from my point of view.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. And just to go along with that, what would be maybe some places that people that are trying to reach like-minded people, what would be some, if you know of any personal places that people can go, like a website or whatever? Because for me, I know freedomcells.org. That is Derek Brose's and John Bush's website, where you go on there, you try to find a group or certain people that are in your local area, connect with them, but then also try to get offline, try to meet in real life and try to talk about certain things, whatever topics you want to get into. So I know that that's an option. I know like there could be maybe a Facebook group or something, but if they're like, how, like for instance, how did you meet all these people that you ended up doing the webinar event with?
Well, that actually, amazingly enough, was through Facebook, because I looked up, because I was into the podcast, What on Earth is Happening? So I looked up Mark Passio, Natural Law, What on Earth is Happening? And I found specific groups related to those podcasts I was following. And then, I knew I was speaking to people that had looked into the same material I was looking into. So I would say just start with something you're passionate about and communicate with the people that are also passionate about that thing. Nature's a great place. I tend to see like people that love nature tend to have at least that understanding. So that's a good place to connect with people. I made a couple really great friends through the Freedom Cells. That was one of the first things I was going to bring up. I still have a longtime friend from the Freedom Cell. So that's a good way to go. We have the One Great Work Network, and that's all people that have looked into, studied, trying to teach natural law. And so I would check out onegreatworknetwork.com. And, now we have like different platforms like Odyssey and getting away from YouTube. One Great Work Network, there's just like a whole long list of people, different presenters. And each of them, if you click on one of them, you can usually find an email or a way to contact that person. I use Discord a lot. I have a lot of groups in Discord. I always put my email address on my website for people to contact me. I also have another website called chrisjantzen.com, and I'm trying to build what I call One Great Work Warriors, and I'm working on a course to that effect. The course is still in process, which, it says join me in an intensive course, but we're still working on the course, but if you want to get on my email list, go to chrisjantzen.com, and I'm bringing people into my Discord channel, and I'm trying to work on forming more communities and forming more groups. And anybody can do that. There's just so many ways to do it. There's so many platforms out there. It just takes effort and willpower.
Yeah, definitely willpower. Especially when you're starting out on something brand new that you haven't done before, it's going to take some time. Because I remember when I was first getting into the video editing, the first thing that I thought of was trying to visualize Mark Passio's podcasts. So I know that there are some people that uploaded his stuff on YouTube and they just had some slides, and they all went with the video, but they weren't like they weren't tailored for exactly what he was specifically saying at that moment in the podcast. So what I did, I took like his first podcast, which was almost 2 hours, and I literally everything that he brought up, basically, I tried to attach something that was similar to what he was talking about. And you have to search for the actual image. You have to find a good quality image. You have to download it. You have to put it in a good file where you can access it easily and not have it get lost. And so there's a lot to it. So especially when people are just starting out like me, by the time I was done with that whole thing, it took 2 weeks. And by the time I was done, I was way better than I was beforehand. So like things that I couldn't do really that well in the beginning, it was really simple and it was like the back of my hand by the time I was done. So it's all about the willpower and just understanding that you're going to have those stumbles or those awkward moments or anything like that. So there
And
was
that
something else I was
feeling,
about to say too,
you
but
know, you get that feeling when you make something. It's worth it. I always want to advertise that to people. When you put that much effort into something, your heart into it, when you get to some kind of small completion point, it gives you an incredible feeling of joy and happiness that in this dark world we need those little wins, you know? And I think a lot of people study this stuff. They look on the internet and they're constantly taking in all this bad news and like, oh, that damn government, those, you know, and all that bad negative energy, it really just kind of stays inside of you if you don't do something with it. So you got to find a way to funnel it out, you know? And that's kind of what we were thinking with the funnel. You got to funnel this stuff out. We got to get it to other people. They're not going to, you know, they might think Chris Jantzen, that big nose guy is so weird. He's a weirdo. He's always talking about spiritual stuff. Well, then you get on there and say it your way. Say it in a way that makes sense, you know? Like Nicholas is saying it in his way, and I appreciate his way, you know? We all do it our own way, and we all figure it out one piece at a time. And if your website doesn't look super fancy, then it makes you more real, right?
yeah, definitely. And do you still only have a little bit left, right? You have to
Yeah, I
get
do
going
got to
soon.
head out in about, 3-4 minutes here.
Okay, perfect. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to come on here. Seriously, Chris, it means a lot to me, and I appreciate it very much. If you just want to just list off the places that people can find you at once again, and if there's anything upcoming that you have planned, if you want to let people know about that as well.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and we can talk again. Now we're buddies. Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll have to do
definitely.
future. I'll have you on my show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be fantastic. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Nicholas. Yeah. He did a great job showing my website, Endevil.life, not .com. It's Endevil.life. And I'm also on the One Great Work Network. You'll see my content on there as well. And also I have that chrisjantzen.com where you can send up to my email list. And right now, the Funnel Conference is on Odyssey, and you can look up Freedom Under Natural Law, and you'll find it there. Or you can just look up the website, freedomundernaturalllaw.com. And we're just going to get busy starting to plan the next conference. And I think our next conference we might go outside of our group and bring in some other speakers too. So, or we might do another one after that. I don't know. We're all really excited about doing this great work. So thanks so much for having me today, Nicholas.
Yeah, not a problem. I just want to say I commend you for what you're doing and you participating in that event. I thought it was fantastic when I first heard about it, and I'm glad it went smoothly and hope the reception was great. I'm looking forward to watching it myself and seeing your presentation, most importantly. And because what you were talking about for me, just the short little description, it really resonated with me. So I'm so happy that I was able to have you on. And yeah, I look forward to hopefully having you on again in the future and maybe vice versa. So I appreciate that offer. So if you just want to stay on the line, just right after we get off, just to talk for just
Sure
real
thing.
briefly.
Yeah.
All right. All right. I appreciate it.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great night. Take care.